All right, so at AIFARMS, we collect a lot of data. There's a lot of data out there that we start collecting. Researchers come to us, say, hey, I have data that we want to make available. Angela was one of those that came to us and says, I have terabytes of data. How can I make this available? So things that we look at is we want to make sure that the data is organized correctly, that we have good ways of describing the data, because without any of these type of things, we can make this data available, and I'll show you an example of what happened, but people might not see it. They might not be able to use it, and we don't want that to happen because we have this wonderful data. Now, one of the famous principles that we try to hear as much as possible, 2016, a paper was published called FAIR, which is basically making your data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And so what I'll talk about is specifically how we try to accomplish that. All right, so this is my use case that I start with. In 2015 to 2018, I worked on a project called TerraRef. This is making a reference data set. We had this gantry system that ran over an acre of a field, and you can see this little white box underneath it where we had a lot of instruments. We had LiDAR, we had 3D cameras, we had regular RGB cameras, we had hyperspectral cameras. And the idea was, if we run this over the sorghum every day, 365 days a year, we can see the plants grow from beginning to end, and we can see exactly which genotypes do well, which don't do well, what is the right right amount of water, what is the right amount of soil. Everything that we can measure, we try to measure, and then use this as a way for training models and training the system to do this. And so we have a lot of data. So here's an example of some of the data sets that we have. We can see in the bottom picture on the right, we can see the plants, the sorghum plants starting to grow in 3D. There's the temperature. We can see we have these wavelengths of plots where we basically stitch them all together. We can see all the different wavelengths at 10 nanometers. And so we have quite a bit of data there, and this was amazing, and I was so proud of it. Like you can see here, we got 4 terabytes of data per day. We have over 1 petabyte of data, and it's so much wonderful data, and nobody wanted to use it. And so this was, like, it hurts me. Like, it still hurts me to this day that we have all this wonderful data sitting there. It's 30 million files. Why is nobody using it? Well, it's too much data. People don't know what it is. People can't find it. People don't know how it's well organized. We have a lot of metadata, but it's really hard for them to find it, access it, and reuse it. And so this is where the FAIR principles come into play. So what we learned there is we started saying, okay, what if we organize it by season and by date and by camera? And so people could still starting to really slowly use it, but still, it's 100 gigabytes of data that you downloaded for a single day. I don't know about you, but my laptop was sitting on the table there, has a really large hard drive. It has a terabyte of storage on there, which means 10 days of data, and then I have no space for my operating system. So even that is not doable anymore. Right? Like jokingly, I tell people, it's like, if you want this data, come get it. It's only a petabyte. Right? It's a lot of data, and so trying to find it, trying to make sure we have the right metadata with it. How do you do this? Now, really in the end, the thing that we forgot to do in this project, and that we're doing in AIFARMS, is we assign a group of people, which is the data management team. So, AIFARMS is a data management team. I'm one of those. Anna Lucek is the other person. I don't think she's here today, is part of this. You might have seen Matt earlier. Jess is walking around as well, and I think Vikram is not in town right now, no, unfortunately. I'll be happy to answer some questions later if you have questions about it, but basically it's how do we help the researchers publishing their data and make it so that other researchers can use the data as well. So what we really want is to come up with a best practices, right? Software, I'm a software engineer. I know where to go if I want to publish my software. I go GitHub. Right? Everybody goes to GitHub. I publish my software there. Everybody can find it. People search it. There's a GitHub for Dummies book that you can just go to the bookstore or online. You buy it, you grab it, you learn how to use it. What we want is we want something similar for data. And so what we started with is this slide set of options on how to collect your data, of how to organize your data, how to publish your data. And there's some questions in there like, how do we make it so that people can cite it? How can I make it so that, what license do I use? How do I make my data available, right? by default, if you don't have a license, the data is copyrighted to you. So you need to make sure you have a license. As part of the university, one of the questions that's interesting is like, if a student collects the data and the student leaves the university, who is responsible for questions about that data afterwards? And it's some things that we hadn't really thought about, and that as we started doing this, became important. Right now, there's even another one, which hopefully most people are aware of, is that if the student leaves the university, their box folder disappears, which basically means their data disappears. You all know that, right? Uh-huh. No. I actually had a conversation with somebody that lost their data the other day, or their students' data. So Angela's dataset, PigLife, is one of the ones that we used as an example. Data collected 2021 to 2022. It's all video data. The dataset is annotated, and she asked us if we can make it available. So how do we go through this process of making this data available? Like here's some of the images. The video was annotated by experts with the where are the pigs, what are the pigs doing at that point in time. And so it's a really cool data set. And it's like, I was like, yes, how do we make this available? How do we make it findable, et cetera? So the first thing that we did is we asked them to fill out what is a data sheet. This is language you just write down in words. There's a whole bunch of questions in there. When was this data collected? How was this data collected? Who helped collecting the data? And these data sheets are actually in the AIFARMS, in the AIFARMS, but in the AI community. This is something that a lot of people use to describe their data sets. This is a human readable way of describing what the data is. And as you start working and collecting this data, really what you should be doing is filling out this form. In this case, we filled it out afterwards, because that's going to happen most of the time. But you do this, and basically you start filling out. And it starts a conversation between the data managers, us, and the data producers. And so now we can start talking to them. Hey, have you thought about a license? Who owns this data set? Have you thought about what happens after the student leaves? All those questions start becoming available, and we start having a conversation as we collect all this information that we publish in this data sheet. So this basically makes it reusable, because people can now look at it and say, hey, I know exactly what this data is, what is in there, who is it collected, where do I go if I have questions, what is the license, etc. So now we make it reusable. The next thing that we want to make sure is that it's accessible, right? I have worked on projects where the faculty says, yes, I have all this data. It sits on that hard disk underneath my desk in the student's office. It's not accessible at that point. It's there, maybe the metadata is available, but nobody can reach it unless they go into that office and hook up that hard drive. So just having the data sitting somewhere doesn't make it accessible. Well, so what we ended up doing is making this data accessible by having it online all the time. We ended up writing a small web script that basically publishes the data. People can go there, download the data. You can go to Zenodo to publish your data there. You can go to Hugging Face these days. You can publish your data there. So there's a lot of places where you can publish your data. The university library is another great place to publish your data. So there's a lot of places where you can publish your data. You get a DOI. You can reference that in your paper. You can see how many people have downloaded your data. It's a great way for you as a faculty to go like, hey, my data set is amazingly popular. 10,000 people have downloaded it. It's like, it sort of becomes like a citation for your publication record, saying, hey, I'm a famous person, I have a lot of data. The thing that we do here, and this is why we have this sort of more special application, is we wanted to track the users downloading it, and they had to approve the license, and so that we could say, yes, you can download it for a certain amount of time. So there was a little bit of an extra step that we wanted to do here. So now the data is accessible. People can download it. Next step is, how do you find it? Like, we host the data here. It's not GitHub. GitHub, people knows where the data is. How do you go about that? Well, fortunately, there is something called schema.org. This is a way of adding a small set of JSON to your web page that Google comes by, scrapes, and says, I now know that this describes a data set. So if you look in the green text, you can see that this is a data set. It's PigLife. Here's the license. Here's where you can download it. This is who the person is to contact. There's all this information about the data set that's embedded in the web page. Google comes by, scrapes it, says, great, I now index this into my dataset search. So if you go there, you should be able to find pig life. And so this is a great way for us to basically publish it, make it findable, and using your standard tools that you're already familiar with, Google and everything else, you can just find this data. So now we've basically made sure that people can find it. Just hosting it at NCSA, we're famous, but we're not that famous that everybody comes there. So we've done the F, we've done the A, and we've done the R, so the last one left is the I. Understanding the data. Right? It is important that we describe what this data is to make it interoperable. We want to make sure that people say, oh, this is a bunch of images. But what extra information is there with these images? Just knowing that there's a bunch of images is not enough frequently, especially for machine learning. You want to basically describe what is in there. You know, do we have specific bounding boxes around the pigs? How are these formatted? What format do you use for that? How is all this written up? And so one of the things that we leverage off is a standard called ML Commons, Croissant, which basically is supported by lots of groups, people, Hugging Face, Google, Meta, a lot of groups came together and said, we should come up with a standard of making this data interoperable. And so this is what the ML Commons Croissant is. We publish the data sets, make it available so that now when a user comes to this with their machine learning operation or with their application, it can say, hey, give me the information about this data set. It downloads this Croissant format, and now it knows that there's test data, there's train data, there's validation data, it's Cocoa JSON, so I know everything now I know how to work with this data set. So now we've made it interoperable. So at this point, we've done all the fair steps. And so we've done a whole bunch of things. Now, one thing I want to point out, like every good presentation has an XKCD comic, by the way. It has to be fair. Fair is important, right? It is important that we early on start looking at how do we make this data accessible. Like, we don't want to do this as the last little step just before the student graduates, because frequently they're too busy trying to find a job or anything else, and this becomes just an afterthought. And this data sits then again on the hard disk in the corner of the student's lab that nobody can see. And it's a shame of the data. So we want to make sure that we do this early on. This is what our goal is. The other thing to keep in mind, and this is what I learned in TerraRef, is data is never ready to be used immediately. Like, you can have all these wonderful systems, you collect all this data. I don't want to know how much time Angela spent on making all those videos and all these images and all that data ready for publication. This is something you should not underestimate. But the benefit for the researchers, for the whole community, is massive. It is important for us to have these diverse data sets available and having the ability for us to look at all these data sets that we can grab. Like, we're working with other people now, we have pigs, we have goats. If we get this collection of all these animals and we can start training models on this, this is going to be immensely important for us to build these models that are not just focusing on one specific animal, but are starting to become more foundational models. And that is what we're trying to do as AIFARMS, right? We're trying to build these foundational models. As I said, the comic here is we should not invent another standard, so this is why we're trying to leverage the schema, the croissant, the FAIR principles, all of those, the data sheets, all of those standard things that most people are aware of or that we're trying to make people aware of without having to yet another standard that people have to start understand how to use. And I think